All right, so welcome to the coffee break. This is the episode number 79. Thank you very much for joining. As usual, this is a very open space for any questions or topics that you have, any projects that you're working on, very informal. And as usual, let me start with you. If you have any questions or projects that you are working on, I know that we are very, very close to the DevCon happening in San Francisco and Munich. Actually, the next coffee break on September 6th will be on the same week as the DevCon. So probably one of my colleagues will be hosting here. I'll be during the event. I may join some event view for you if you're not joining there. But we are very close. I know that we are mostly sold out for Munich, but for San Francisco, we may have a few spots yet. So if you want to join us, it's time. Yeah, so let me hand over to you. Any questions or topics that you might have, please open up your microphone, open up your camera. Looking forward to see you.
Hey, my name is Dan Tartaglia, and
Hi, Dan.
hey, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, but I work for a company called HKS. I'm a C# Revit API guy. I'm not a web developer, so sometimes the code examples are kind of frustrating me a little bit because they're not in the language I'm used to using. So I'm struggling with that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure I'm not the first person who's mentioned that to you before. Um, I'm sure it's not uncommon, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So I'm trying to figure that part out right now.
So I have a question for you. When you say the samples are not in the language, you said that you work with C#, right?
Yeah. So some of the language are more, generic as far as language goes, and I guess I'm having trouble interpreting how they should be brought into the C# world, or brought into a world where I can understand how the language, the logic has to work for something to happen. And I'm just having a little bit of frustration with that.
Okay. And I'm curious, right? Because we do have a good mix of C# and Node.js on our repo and on our blogs, right? And Node.js is essentially JavaScript and or TypeScript. Most of our samples are JavaScript. So on the Autodesk side, and that's the part that, and just explain why we have those two, right? I would say that no, roughly 90% of all the developers we have on the platform today are using either .NET or Node.js, roughly the same number. The other 10% is a variety of languages, from Java to Python to Lua to lots of other things, right? But no, it's roughly 45 to 45% on Node and .NET. We do have lots of .NET samples. Our tutorials are in both .NET and Node.js. And so yeah, now there is a big difference when you go from desktop to cloud, right? And there is a framework difference, right? When you are working on a desktop, you're probably using WinForms or XAML or something like that. When it's cloud, you have this separation between server and client. And the client will always be a mix of HTML and JavaScript and CSS, or if you're using React or something that like a framework, right? Now, do you have a project that you're working on to migrate? How is your learning going there to move from desktop to cloud?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's it's been a struggle, a little bit of a struggle this week. Um, One example I'm trying to go through right now is a Sheets export to ACC, and it is mostly Java. It's not C#. It's JavaScript. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to move forward with it, and it just one of those things. It's a week, and it's the stress of trying to get it done within a week if possible, but probably not. It's just a matter of what I can learn from this week to get me moving forward.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so I understand. Yeah, the beginning it takes time, right? I have a suggestion for you, right? We have support, and we have a way for you to book a time with the team. So if you go to the APS website and look for, let me share my screen, and look for support, right? And move this away, and then go to get help. If you scroll down, there is a email support that you can just ask us a question, specific question, or you can book a time with our team to discuss your specific case. So no, don't struggle for too long. If you have a question, just book a time here and let's talk. Maybe what is this? Call locally. Okay, for now. So you can book a time here, right, with us, or you can ask a specific question. Usually, email is better when you have a code that is not working or some workflow kind of thing. But if it's like a general discussion, booking a time, it's easier. So yeah, those two options are available. You can always ask on Stack Overflow as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. And if you haven't seen, we do have, if you go to getting started, there are some tutorials here that you can use as well. So
I've gone
those
through those,
tutorials,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
they are in .NET and C#. Sorry,
Yep.
C# and Node.js.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks then. And well, welcome to the cloud development. It's
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be fun. Just take some time.
Okay.
So I see lots of new names here that I haven't seen before. So anyone new that'd like to have a question, project?
Hey, Augusto.
Hi, Bed. How are
Hi,
you?
how are you?
Well,
Good. I have a quick question. Actually, I have done it before, but I totally forgot. I've been using a couple of hours on it and I couldn't find it at the documentation. So basically, I'm trying to add the tasks regards 3D model or to the element, right? So when you select a geometry or element at the 3D model, so I would like to extract the external ID or DBID, so I can link a task to this element. So was a method at the viewer where you can, if you click on there used to be a method, I remember. I'm sure there is a method that if you click on at the element or something, you can extract. I totally forget the name of the method. I'm not sure if it's.
so when you click on an element, right, there is a selection changed event that
Yeah.
notifies you that that thing was selected.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, is that the one?
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember the method name. That's the
Oh,
issue.
you have to say viewer dot add event listener,
Okay.
and then that method requires the event name and the function that will be executed, right?
Okay. Okay.
So the event name is selection changed event. So I
Okay.
believe
Select a change
Autodesk
event.
dot
Yeah.
viewing
Oh,
dot
love
selection changed
viewing
event.
this. Yeah. It's in the yeah. The idea is not and it's not it's not typed. So that's why it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you get that event, you should get the DBIDs, and then you can convert from
Yeah.
DBIDs to properties.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm familiar with it actually.
Cool.
Yeah. But I was just trying to remember that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of sample where you have, no, it's related to that, but I also like to show samples, right? So this sample
Yeah.
uses that kind of thing because here we have 2D and here we have 3D, and the difference between this sample and many other samples we have when you do this 2D and 3D combination is that in this case those drawings are DWGs and they are not the same file, right? So in the case of Revit, we have a 3D view that is connected to a 2D view. But here we have one DWG and another DWG, right? They are completely independent. So when I click on some element on the 2D, I have to go into the properties. So get the DBID, go into the properties, find the PNID or the PNID, then go in the 3D, find an element here, properties, with the same line number, sorry, yeah, tag. So in 2D's tag, confuse that. In 2D's tag and in 3D's line number. So you have to match them by a property, not by the DB ID. So that's why it's important to get selection and then get the elements. So sometimes you need to map between two things that are not really the same, right? So in this case, you have a 3D representation versus a 2D representation, and you have to map them using some other property like an ID or something. So yeah.
Great.
Just a good example on why this is important, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm mainly dealing with the Revit file actually, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to rely on external ID. So
yeah,
most
that should
accurate.
work
And
as well.
and from the external ID, I'm mapping the DB ID to make it selected at the viewer.
So Andres is asking for the source code. This sample is here, and all samples are on github.com/Autodesk Platform Services. And then you go to repos, and that repo name is plant something. Yeah, plant operations. So most of the samples will have the address of the sample will be the repo name for most of them. So yeah. But anyway, let me share that. Oh. Yeah, so there is always so many samples, right? It's good to have someone to find out where they are. All right. Any other questions or topics?
Hey, Augusto.
Hi, Naveen.
This is Naveen from Skip Renovation. I joined last time, and this is my second time here. Yeah, and it's been great with Accelerator. Had a lot of questions. They've been helping me out. So one of the question I still have is choosing between the BIM 360 or like a local cloud storage, like a Google Drive, right? I use the token estimator to see, okay, fairly based on our consumption, how many tokens that we would get. So I can see that the more the number of models, quickly the pricing gets higher if we're using Google Drive. But other than that, in terms of performance, like retrieving the models from the cloud storage, do you think retrieving from BIM 360 is much faster than retrieving from the Google Drive?
Okay, so first your question, then something else to think about, right? So to your question, right? It doesn't really matter the where the model is hosted, right? Because the first step is always to translate that model. And to translate that model, you have to transfer from wherever it is into Autodesk and then translate, right? So the traffic translating the file may be a bit slower, may not, but it's just a one-off thing. And even if it's a bit slower, will not aggregate that much, right? So don't worry about performance in that case, because it's really insignificant, right? Assuming that you're using something like Google or AWS or Azure, right? But if you have something that is really far away and really slow, yeah, that may be a problem. But if you're using like one of the big providers, no problem. Now the question is, where your customers are hosting the data? So that's the question that you have to ask yourself, right? Where do they host the data? Because if they host the data on ACC, right, meaning they are using Autodesk, right, we translate those files for you, and there is lots of benefits there. If the file is hosted anywhere else, then what is the version management that they have? How they control all of those things, right? So my suggestion will be to really explore with your customers where they keep the models, and what are the benefits of keeping those models where they keep, and what are the potential benefits of keeping that data with Autodesk. So one of the benefits of hosted data with Autodesk is that we understand those models, and we can extract additional data on those models, right, for them. If they're using something like Google Drive, well, Google Drive is very agnostic, so we not understand all the ins and outs of those models, right? So that's the question to ask and to discuss with your customers. So that's my suggestion for you. Focus on that first, and then, okay, the technology should work regardless, because performance will not differ that much.
Okay. Yeah, predominantly like the companies right now, all the data is stored in Google Drive. So to transform that all to BIM 360 might be a maybe it's a goal to get there, but maybe I want to start with the existing system. Maybe just keep the at least minimal files in BIM 360 maybe, but we want to test it out with Google Drive first and see how things are, and then move to BIM 360 at a later point. But yeah, I get your point. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, interesting. So you did mention the estimator, right? So there is a blog post about that here, explaining how it works, and there is a few videos as well. And the link should be right here, right? And helps you understand a bit more how much it costs to use the platform. And when files are coming from our providers like BIM 360 Docs or Fusion Docs or Fusion 360, sorry, there is no cost on the translation because we translate them for you, right? So most of that's explained here when you click on the question mark symbols. And it's essentially how many times you translate one or various models, right? And yeah, so let me share the link for this thing. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. It's a nice new addition to the platform, and a new tool that you can use. And yeah, it's now available.
Sweet. And just one more question. So this is one of the Autodesk staff was helping me out already, which is the we are right now retrieving the files from S3, which is one of the tasks was to use design automation API to retrieve all the families, Revit families from S3, and then load it and then create an output file, right? It's a simple workflow. But I use the initial code sample for .NET from APS, which is to retrieve the file. So one of the thing was to retrieve the file from S3, but I have all the credentials inside of the app bundle, which is not a good practice, right? So I wanted to eliminate that, and the suggestion that was given was to use like a pre-signed URL. I'm not familiar with AWS much, but I'm learning. So if there's any documentation on like what is the best workflow, because we don't want to leave the AWS credentials in an app bundle because that gets deployed to the APS server, right? So yeah, I think the one of the workaround was suggested was the pre-signed URLs. I haven't dwelled into implementing that, but yeah, I think any documentation on there or any different workaround too might be actually helpful.
So let me confirm here, right? So your data is hosted on buckets, on S3 buckets, not Autodesk buckets, S3 buckets, and you wanna read from and write back to those buckets.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, signed URLs are the way to go because before submitting the request, you have the before submitting the request, your system has access to the credential, to the AWS credentials. You create a signed URL and then you provide that to Design Automation so you can read and write from it, right? Mm-hmm. So the documentation you're looking for is not actually from us, it's from AWS on how to create signed URLs.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the signed URL will come straight from AWS API. And whenever you submit the work item as an input and output destination, you provide those URLs. So Design Automation doesn't know or doesn't understand specific hosts like AWS or Azure or Google, right? The only one that we understand is the Autodesk OSS bucket structure. So if instead of hosting on AWS, Azure, or Google, whatever, right, you store on the Autodesk OSS, right? You don't need to provide signed URLs or anything like that. You just say, this is the bucket name and this is the object key, and we do everything for you.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, let me get here, Design Automation bucket. I think we have that somewhere here. I'll find that for you. Or if someone else from my team is on the call that can help me get the documentation there on how to use bucket names instead. Where is it? Where is it? See if I can find it easy. I'll keep looking for it.
Is there a blog post from Young?
No, it is documented, isn't it? Or Zong also blogged about it, but it's documented somewhere.
Oh, let me check.
Yeah, if you have, but if you have the blog post, that helps as well, John. Anyway, thank you. I'll let John help me out.
Can I ask a question in the meantime?
Yeah, hi, Jonathan.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, good.
We're aiming to give our customers who are not usually on our BIM 360 or ACC hub access to one specific model for each customer. Let's say because they bought an apartment and we want to show them that model. Is it possible for us to build our own application that will have the ID of the model and that person and then they log into our app, and then at the back end, our server will then authenticate against the ACC or BIM 360 and just bring in a viewer in with access to only that one specific model. Is that a sensible approach?
So two pieces, right? So first, that may be a licensing issue here, right? So whenever you are giving public access to BIM 360 features, right?
Yeah.
Whoever is using the product needs a license, right? Or whoever is using the data hosted on the product. Now, you need to sort this out. Now, the second piece is you can have a server-to-server communication using two-legged to access BIM 360 data. So in that case, you have this public or public-ish interface that connects to your server that then do a two-legged communication with Autodesk, get the model and stream that to the client. Now, as you are having this public-facing view, right? You have to be very precise about permissions because you have to use the right scope, the right type of token to avoid, now that it's public, someone gaining access to more data there. So you have to be very precise on the permission. So the main reason we have all that permissions in BIM 360 is to avoid that scenario where someone that doesn't have access or should not have access can read or write any of data, right? So if you open this backdoor, you have to be very careful.
Okay, so you would suggest, in this case, do the two-legged authentication with a user who is not such a high level, but like a special, let's say, consumer user that has only limited access by default, and then for each of our end users, give the appropriate model. And you're saying that there's a licensing. The licensing stems from the fact that we're using the viewer in our own web app. That's the.
No. So
or is it the BIM 360 ACC issue?
Yeah. So for about the first one, right? Yes, a two-legged access token should work. You just have to be careful about permissions. About licensing, it's just that you have to review the terms of use of the product because you are having more users, or you have more people using BIM 360 features than you could potentially have paid for, right? So you have to make sure that your license allows that.
Okay, and who would I be able to contact with that, or is just the license?
So
we're buying BIM 360 and ACC hub access, or it's basically by the users that we have from a reseller here in Tel Aviv.
So let me suggest you this then, just because that may be a deeper, very specific conversation, right? If
Yep.
you can write down the summary of what you are trying to do.
Sure.
No, who is accessing, sorry, and
Yes.
what are they accessing?
Yep.
Then we review on that specific case, but we'll need more information from your side as well. And then
Sure.
just to confirm that.
Should I send it to help at
Yes.
APS? Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
aps.help@autodesk.com.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Augusto, can I add something very fast?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I remember a couple of months ago, you showed us a way how to extract token for specific model as well. So you can get the GWT token for specific URN model. So the user, whatever access, will access only for this specific model. That's what I remember a couple of months ago.
Yes, that's the permission side, right? So if they have a specific model, they can give view only access, read only access to that specific model. Yes, that's the scoping on the access token level. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's what we're aiming for. A view
Yeah.
only for specific for one model.
So let me share here.
Hope you're doing well. Also, I have
Hi,
some questions.
Nazila.
Thank you. I'm AI engineer, and recently I'm exploring Autodesk platform services. I have one question because I coded by Python. Do we have any sample project for viewer that is developed by Python? Because I can't find it. It was all with JavaScript or .NET or something like this. Do you have some sample with Python?
I don't know. Do we?
Yes, we do have. I can share maybe later on.
Yeah.
We do have one.
I found just something for 2017. Is this recently, or you mean that one?
Recently this year, I guess it was this year.
And if you can share the link, it will be really great. I really
Sure,
appreciate
sure.
it. Thank you. And also, I have one more question. If you want to hire someone to be responsible for coding and developing with Autodesk platform services, which language do you suggest and recommend for us to search for that? For example, a full stack or a software engineer that is, which language do you prefer and suggest us?
Yeah. So first, Python. Why are you using Python? Is that your language that you like, or is there a specific requirement there? I'm just curious.
No, not specific requirements, because just I'm a data scientist and AI engineer, and I always code with Python, and I want to test something before we want to develop it or having some product or something like this. So I'm really much better with Python, but yeah, it's just my
preference. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So okay. Just because of time, we had like 1 or 2 minutes left. So to your question, right? Whenever using cloud and web APIs, right? You eventually need to do a browser kind of client, right? That browser client will need to be in JavaScript or TypeScript or React, JSX kind of thing, right? You cannot escape from it, right? That's just how the browser works. So you do need one of those to do browser development, right? Or client development. On the server side, it doesn't really matter. It's really your preference. Now, you may be more comfortable with Python. You may prefer the community on Node.js, or you may prefer the support from Microsoft on .NET. But it's at the end, it's just a preference on the server side. You can do amazing things in any of those languages. My only suggestion, if you're going to learn something new, is first do a quick research on what is the overall support for that language on the domain you are looking for, right? So, how good is .NET with the area that we're looking for? If you're going to do data analysis, right? I know Python is very famous there, so probably there is lots and lots of libraries around Python. Node.js is really amazing, or JavaScript on the server, right? Node.js is really amazing with the community support. That is, there are packages for everything on NPM, right? So this kind of thing may be good or bad. So yeah, so look at the requirements you have, and how good that language is for that for those requirements on the server
I
side.
actually want to hire someone new for this one. I'm gonna focus on the data part and AI part. So you suggest that if someone know JavaScript and React and Node.js, these two things, gonna be good with Autodesk Platform Services and can develop, right? Don't need also know .NET.
Well, you only need .NET for APS if you're doing design automation, because most of the engines are .NET, but not to use the other REST endpoints, right? So now that said, Autodesk desktop world and many of our existing customers do use .NET because of the Microsoft support. So there is a slightly more tendency to go .NET with Autodesk just because of our desktop technologies, right? So lots of existing developers will keep using .NET because of that.
And also just one more question. If we could with Pirate and have come up with some application or something like this that you want to have it as a plugin in Revit, and also we want to share it with other people, is there any way to, or any API in APS that we can protect this code? I mean, not to be open source, to, I don't know, make it somewhere that the other people can't use that code, but can use the plugin. Is there any way?
Yeah, so if you create a plugin, you can definitely host that plugin on the Autodesk App Store, apps.autodesk.com. Can you see?
Also, we can code with Pirate and then go to this Autodesk store.
Yeah, so if you create a plugin, you can share it here. You can sell or distribute through the App Store.
But the code is with Pirate. It's gonna be work here also.
Sorry, can you ask?
With Pirate, that it's we can code with Python there, and
you can do some Python in Revit. You have to look for the Iron Python support.
Yeah, Pirate. I'm using Pirate.
Yeah, PyRevit, yes. PyRevit, I don't think it's supported. João, you mentioned that, right? Not PyRevit.
Yeah,
only...
not by default. Yeah, not by default. Yeah. The users need to install this on their Revit desktop.
Okay, so I'm really sorry. It's just because we always end at 8:30. Nazila, happy to keep the conversation. Or we can book a time, or we on the next coffee break. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so with that, just because I don't want to run way too over, I know people has other things to go for. And again, as usual, next coffee break is in 2 weeks, same time, same link, 8 a.m. Pacific. As I mentioned, next coffee break will be with the DevCon in San Francisco. So one of my colleagues will be hosting you. I'll be probably remote and showing you the event. And with that, thank you very much, and see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.